Aaron Maddox had only been awake for 5 minutes when the sky above Minnesota tore open like a cheap theater curtain, and a glowing blue rectangle appeared with the enthusiasm of a pop-up ad. The message inside it flickered over every screen on Earth, from stadium billboards to microwaves, declaring in booming alien monotone that every human now carried a bounty worth 3 million starbits. At that exact moment, Aaron was sitting in a diner, halfway through the first sip of his coffee, while a couple across from him argued about whether 3 million starbits sounded like a lot. He watched the broadcast in stunned silence, his mug hovering halfway to his mouth as the message repeated in an increasingly cheerful tone, as if it were announcing a sale on socks instead of the galactic price tag on humanity. Then the diner door burst open and a screaming jogger stumbled inside, claiming she had been abducted by tall, glowing creatures and accidentally dropped back because she bit one of them. She pointed upward with a trembling hand as the alien ship zipped away like a guilty cat. The room erupted into chaos. People ducked under tables, someone tried bribing the waitress for her place in the kitchen freezer, and Aaron quietly wondered who had written the bizarre safety pamphlet taped to the door titled "In Case of Interdimensional Visitors." His day, which had started with a peaceful sunrise and the promise of blueberry pancakes, had officially derailed into something unfit for any ranger training he had ever received. Government announcements arrived next, each more hysterically calm than the last. The United Nations insisted everything was under control, while simultaneously advising citizens to avoid going outdoors, going indoors, standing near windows, standing near doors, or standing in general. By the afternoon, aliens had attempted to snatch 2 entire football teams during a live broadcast. A man had tried selling himself online using the caption "slightly used human," and Aaron was called in by a top-secret global task force with a name so overdramatic it clearly had been chosen by committee. Operation Badger Claw was housed in an underground facility that smelled faintly of burnt wires and old socks. Aaron found himself sitting at a metal table across from generals, scientists, and one very nervous man in a lab coat who kept hiding behind his clipboard every time Aaron looked at him. They pulled up holograms of alien guilds, explained the interstellar marketplace, and showed him footage of the creatures who had initiated the bounty. Aaron listened politely, nodding when appropriate, although half his mind was still busy processing the fact that he apparently now had a cosmic retail value. They explained that the galactic guilds were united under a council that specialized in hunting rare species, and humans had apparently achieved the status of shiny collectible. The guilds were efficient, merciless, and incredibly creative with their traps. The scientists emphasized this last point by showing a clip of an alien net launcher disguised as a friendly mailbox. Aaron stared at it for a long moment, then swallowed. Eventually someone cleared their throat and informed him he had been selected for a mission. Aaron blinked slowly. He was a tracker, not a soldier, known for finding lost hikers, misplaced drones, and once a very upset porcupine. He pointed this out, but they replied that this made him perfect. Humans needed someone who could navigate wild terrain and think quickly with minimal resources. Someone who could improvise. Someone who did not panic easily. Someone who had unintentionally survived being chased by a grizzly with nothing but a thermos, and what the papers had called impressive diplomacy. Also, they added, he was the only one who had entered the background check system without triggering at least 3 security flags. Aaron had no idea whether to feel proud or mildly offended. They showed him the ship next. It was clearly alien in origin but also clearly patched up by humans. Strange glowing panels were held together with bolts that definitely belonged on an IKEA shelf. Parts of the hull were covered in mismatched metal sheets labeled "Do Not Touch," probably explosive, and extremely explosive. One engine hummed peacefully while the other sputtered like a dying lawnmower. Aaron walked around it twice, gently poking the side. It made a noise suspiciously similar to a sigh. The engineer escorting him insisted the ship was completely safe, then quietly added that the seat belts were optional because they had not figured out how to attach them without shorting out navigation. This did not reassure him. The plan was simple in its optimism. Aaron would launch into space, track down whoever ordered the bounty on humans, negotiate if possible, dismantle the operation if necessary, and return home before panic spiraled into global collapse. The mission briefing team said all this with straight faces, as if they were asking him to run a weekend errand instead of confront the most dangerous species hunting organizations in the galaxy. Aaron listened, took a deep breath, and agreed. Not because he felt heroic, but because someone had to go, and he could not stand the idea of the world living in fear while he stayed on the ground pretending everything was normal. Besides, the alternative candidates were apparently a conspiracy theorist who claimed aliens owed him money and a man who had tried to fight the hologram broadcast with a garden rake. The launch preparations were chaotic. Reporters gathered outside the hidden facility, begging for information. Scientists handed Aaron gadgets that were either brilliant inventions or future lawsuits. One device supposedly translated alien languages, though it sometimes confused verbs and had once called a high-ranking official a spicy omelet. Another gadget was an emergency beacon that looked suspiciously like a keychain flashlight. Aaron packed everything carefully, including snacks, because no one had clarified whether space had vending machines. During final checks, he stood alone in the ship's cockpit. The star-filled sky stretched endlessly above him, shimmering like an ocean he had never learned to swim in. His heartbeat echoed in his ears, a mix of fear, disbelief, and something else he could not quite describe. Determination, maybe? Responsibility, maybe? Or perhaps it was simply the stubborn human instinct to push forward even when common sense advised against it. The engines whirred unevenly, the cockpit lights flickered, and a faint smell of burned plastic drifted through the air. Aaron exhaled and sat in the pilot's seat. The radio crackled with static. Earth waited below, fragile, confused, and suddenly holding a price tag it had never asked for. The sky shimmered again, the launch sequence ignited, and with a violent jolt, Aaron Maddox left the planet behind, carrying with him the hope of 8 billion people and the absurd knowledge that somewhere out there, someone considered him worth exactly 3 million starbits. Aaron Maddox discovered very quickly that space travel in a half-repaired alien ship felt less like gliding through the cosmos, and more like riding a shopping cart down a steep hill, while someone threw fireworks underneath it. The ship rattled, hummed, whined, and occasionally made a noise that sounded eerily like laughter. The stars stretched endlessly ahead of him in cold shimmering streaks, as the battered craft limped toward the first waypoint the task force had marked on his navigation system, a massive trading hub called the Shattered Alliance Port. Aaron tried not to think about how the ship occasionally drifted sideways without warning. The onboard computer insisted this was normal, calling it personality drift. He did not find that reassuring. He spent most of the journey alternating between checking the flickering control panels and trying to decode the alien snacks he had found in a storage compartment. One smelled like lemon cleaner, and the other hissed at him when he opened it. He put them both back. When the Shattered Alliance port finally came into view, Aaron froze. The station looked less like a structure and more like a massive floating coral reef made of metal and light, with pieces jutting out at impossible angles. Ships of every size docked and departed in a swirling dance that somehow avoided collisions by what Aaron assumed was either advanced technology or pure luck. As he moved closer, he could see floating marketplaces suspended between energy beams, drifting platforms with neon signs, and creatures moving in patterns that made his brain struggle to process their shapes. The moment he landed, he felt the ground hum beneath his feet, vibrating with thousands of footsteps, hover pads, and strange organic transportation pods that looked like giant beetles with glowing shells. He stepped out cautiously, clutching the translation device that the scientists had sworn would work. The first creature to greet him was a towering being with 6 arms, each holding a fruit that sparkled like gemstones. It spoke in a rapid clicking language, and Aaron held up the device. The machine whirred, buzzed, then confidently declared that the alien had said, "Please do not lick the merchandise." Aaron slowly lowered the fruit he had been examining. The vendor nodded approvingly, and waved him along. The deeper he walked into the port, the more surreal it became. A robot rolled past him angrily accusing everyone within earshot of stealing its limbs. A gelatinous creature oozed over a stall selling shimmering clothing that changed color with the wearer's emotions. A group of short, furry beings argued loudly about tax regulations on exotic spices. At one point, someone tried to sell Aaron premium human insurance, insisting he would absolutely need it if he planned on surviving the day. Aaron politely declined, though he did ask what the insurance covered. The salesman explained it guaranteed a full refund if he was accidentally dissolved. Aaron walked away quickly. He approached a directory panel that displayed a map of the port. His mission was to find information about the guilds that had placed the bounty on humanity. The directory listed hundreds of markets, vaults, auction houses, and guild enclaves. Aaron focused on the 3 guilds mentioned in his briefing. The Extraction Guild specialized in capturing rare species with frightening efficiency. The Bio-Exchange Guild focused on selling living specimens for purposes Aaron refused to think about. And the Silence Guild handled clean-up operations. That phrase alone had been enough to make every scientist at the briefing go pale. He did not want to get anywhere near them. As he observed his surroundings, Aaron noticed a sudden commotion near a docking bay. A ship had just landed, its ramp lowering to reveal 2 towering hunters dragging a cage made of energy bars. Inside it, curled up and shivering, was a terrified human man dressed in office clothes. Aaron felt his stomach flip. He had prepared himself to see strange things, but witnessing a captured human being treated like rare cargo hit him like a punch. Before he could move, the hunters activated a transport module and vanished with the captive in a burst of shimmering light. The crowd barely reacted. It was just another day at the port. The harsh reality of his mission settled fully onto Aaron's shoulders. These guilds did not see humans as people. They saw them as merchandise, tools, or weapons. If he failed, Earth would become an open market for hunters like the ones he had just seen. He took a breath and forced himself to stay focused. As he turned away from the bay, a sudden scream echoed through the corridors. Aaron spun around just in time to see a small reptilian creature darting between alien legs, clutching a glowing device while several much larger thugs thundered after it. The reptilian creature crashed directly into Aaron, bounced off his chest, and tumbled backward in a frenzy of limbs and squeaks. The larger pursuers slowed when they saw Aaron. One of them pointed and shouted something that even the translation device struggled with, resulting in a very unhelpful message that simply read unintelligible aggressive tones. Before Aaron could react, the tiny reptilian sprang to its feet and clung desperately to his jacket. It shouted a few words that the translator rendered as "Please save me or I will die horribly," followed by an excessive number of panic sounds. Aaron made a split-second decision. He grabbed the creature under one arm and sprinted into the crowd. The thugs barreled after him, knocking aside stalls and infuriated shopkeepers. Aaron shoved past the floating jelly creature, ducked under a robotic vendor arm, and slid between 2 hovering transport crates. Finally he dove behind a stack of metal containers, dragging the little reptilian with him. The thugs thundered past without noticing. Aaron waited until the corridor quieted before speaking. The reptilian creature introduced itself as Kirk, though the translator insisted on adding a clicking sound that Aaron could not pronounce. Kirk explained breathlessly that he had stolen a data key belonging to dangerous guild members and that Aaron had now accidentally saved his life. In Kirk's culture, this created a life debt. Aaron tried to argue that he did not need a sidekick, especially one currently shaking like a wet leaf, but Kirk simply clung to him with teary determination. Then Kirk mentioned something that made Aaron freeze. The data key he had stolen contained information about a figure called the Broker of Souls, the shadowy mastermind rumored to be behind the human bounty. The broker had ties to all 3 guilds and was feared even among criminals. According to Kirk, the broker never appeared physically and only communicated through encrypted channels. If Aaron wanted answers, he would have to deal with this mysterious figure. As Aaron considered this new lead, he glanced back at the vast chaotic hub swirling around them. He had barely been in alien space for an hour, and already he had seen a fellow human kidnapped, nearly been crushed by angry thugs, picked up an unexpected reptile companion, and learned the name of the mastermind behind humanity's newest nightmare. He exhaled slowly, shoulders tense but resolve tightening. The Shattered Alliance port was a maze of danger and opportunity, and Aaron Maddox had just stepped into the heart of it. One thing was clear. The hunt had begun. Aaron Maddox did not expect his journey into the underbelly of the galaxy to begin with following a frantic reptilian pickpocket into a region known on every map as the Undernebula, a place helpfully labeled with warnings such as "Do not enter," "Abandon all hope," and "Extremely flammable." Kirk insisted it was the only place where information about the Broker of Souls circulated openly. As they approached Aaron's battered ship, the space around them shifted from crisp starlight to smoky clouds of swirling green, purple, and red mist. Massive debris fields drifted like haunted asteroids, and shattered station fragments hovered in the distance like broken teeth. The ship creaked in protest, but Aaron coaxed it forward, knowing the alternative was going home empty-handed. The moment they crossed the nebula boundary, the ship navigation flickered violently and spat out a message claiming it would not take responsibility for anything that happened after this point. Aaron muttered to it like a stubborn mule and pressed onwards. The Undernebula quickly revealed itself as less a location and more a lawless galaxy of its own. Strange vessels drifted between shadowy markets suspended inside fractured moons. Holographic signs flickered with advertisements for weapon upgrades, rare creatures, questionable surgeries, and something ominously called memory bleaching. The deeper they traveled, the more Aaron felt an electric tension humming through the air. Everyone here was running from something or hunting something. Kirk whispered warnings every few seconds, telling Aaron not to look directly at certain beings, not to step on glowing cracks in the floor, and definitely not to buy food from a vendor selling something bubbling in a bucket. Aaron decided he would avoid eating anything until they were far from here. Kirk led him to a hidden bazaar built inside the hollowed remains of a massive creature skeleton floating in the nebula. Its ribcage formed arches over the stalls, and eerie bioluminescent vines pulsed around them. Traders whispered, gamblers shouted, and bounty hunters moved in packs. Some creatures wore metal masks. Others carried weapons that hummed with a faint predatory intelligence. Aaron stayed close to Kirk, who darted between legs and crates with practiced speed. They passed a stall where a merchant tried selling living shadows in jars. One jar whispered Aaron's name as he walked by, and he picked up his pace. They reached a dimly lit alcove where two robed figures guarded a narrow archway. Kirk tugged Aaron's sleeve, explaining nervously that this was the path to the Chamber of Echoes, a place where rumors about the broker surfaced, though no one fully understood how. Aaron approached the guards cautiously. His translator device buzzed, processing their language for several awkward seconds before producing a calm message that read, "State your purpose without lying." Aaron considered that this was probably not the time to mention humanity's galactic bounty price. He instead told them he sought knowledge about the broker. The guards silently stepped aside, their glowing eyes tracking every step as Aaron and Kirk entered. Inside, the chamber felt eerily quiet despite being filled with people. Voices were hushed, movements deliberate. A circular pit dominated the center, filled with swirling blue holographic mist. Beings stood around it, placing data chips and credits into the mist, whispering requests, and watching as images flickered before them like visions. Kirk explained that the chamber collected intercepted transmissions from across the nebula. Some were real. Some were false. Some were dangerous to even view. Aaron inhaled deeply and stepped toward the edge. He placed the data key Kirk had stolen into a slot on the pit rim. The mist immediately reacted, swirling faster, pulling images and fragmented voices together. Then the pit spoke. The voice was not one single tone but a blend of layered whispers, as if a chorus were speaking in unison. It addressed Aaron by name. He felt every muscle tense. The broker knew he was here. The mist shifted, forming the faint outline of a figure whose features flickered constantly, never settling into one face. The figure informed Aaron that humans were unique among known species, not because of their physical attributes but because of their subconscious behavior in high-stress situations. Humans created unpredictable energy fluctuations when facing danger, fear, or emotional strain, a trait that interfered with advanced quantum systems. The guilds believed capturing humans and extracting this energy would give them an unrivaled advantage. Aaron listened with growing horror. The broker continued, hinting that the bounties on humans were only one part of a larger galactic play. Several species possessed rare abilities, but humans were the last unclaimed resource. The guilds wanted to harvest them while they still could. Aaron tried to ask why the broker cared, but the mist responded cryptically, stating that balance in the galaxy depended on revealing certain truths at the right time. Before Aaron could press further, the hologram snapped abruptly into static. The entire chamber went silent. Kirk grabbed Aaron's arm, trembling. The guards at the entrance turned sharply, staring toward the pit. Something had changed. A low alarm began to pulse through the chamber, barely audible but unmistakably threatening. Kirk whispered that someone had tracked the data signature from the key. Aaron realized what that meant. The guilds had found them. A moment later, the ceiling cracked open as a group of armored bounty hunters descended, weapons drawn. Shadows scattered as the chamber erupted into chaos. Aaron instinctively shoved Kirk behind a pillar. The hunters approached with the slow confidence of predators who believed escape was impossible. One of them spoke directly into a distortion mask, and Aaron's translator announced that Aaron Maddox was to be taken alive for questioning. Alive did not sound reassuring. When they drew closer, Kirk did something that made Aaron freeze. The little reptilian stepped out from behind the pillar and raised both hands, trembling. It spoke rapidly in its native clicking language. The translator rendered the message as I turn him over. Please do not hurt my family. Aaron stared in disbelief. He realized suddenly that Kirk had not brought him here only out of loyalty. Kirk's family had been kidnapped by the Silence Guild. They had forced him to cooperate. Betrayal flashed in Kirk's eyes, raw and desperate. The hunters seized Aaron before he could react, pinning him to the ground. They activated an energy trap that wrapped around him like glowing chains. He struggled, but the bind tightened. One hunter mocked him for coming this far alone. Aaron gritted his teeth and muttered that humans had a talent for making terrible plans work at the last second. The hunter crouched to reply, but in that moment, Aaron's hand brushed against one of the alien gadgets he had packed earlier. A broken hoverpad prototype. Aaron Maddox spent most of his life tracking lost hikers through forests, not tumbling through a collapsing space station, while pursued by several furious bounty hunters whose weapons hummed like angry beehives. The fog of the Undernebula made everything feel surreal, turning shadows into shapes and shapes into threats. Aaron dragged Kirk behind him as they scrambled into a derelict docking tunnel. Explosions rattled the walls behind them while the scent of burning metal stung the air. Kirk stumbled repeatedly, shaking from fear and guilt. Aaron had every reason to be furious, but he kept pulling him forward, because anger would not save either of them. Kirk tried to speak between gasps, saying he never wanted to betray him, that the Silence Guild held his family in cages, that he had no choice. Aaron only replied that surviving now meant they both needed to focus. It was neither forgiveness nor condemnation, but it was enough to keep Kirk moving. When they reached the far end of the tunnel, Aaron slammed a rusted door shut and wedged a metal bar through the handles. The pounding outside began almost instantly. The hunters were strong enough to tear through the barrier within minutes. Aaron scanned the cramped room they had stumbled into. It was an abandoned hangar bay barely lit by a few flickering panels, long stripped of anything useful except a single craft resting on a broken platform. It was not a ship. It was more like the skeletal frame of a small shuttle with half its hull missing and wires dangling like vines. Kirk panicked, insisting the craft would never fly. Aaron inspected the engines, muttering that it did not need to fly well, it only needed to fly long enough. Through a miracle of human stubbornness and an unhealthy disregard for safety, Aaron managed to hotwire the shuttle using exposed cables, 2 broken circuit rods, and a glowing battery cell that Kirk insisted could explode if someone breathed on it wrong. As the hull shuddered from the hunters prying open the door, Aaron and Kirk climbed aboard. The craft roared to life with a sound that suggested it regretted waking up. Aaron slammed the throttle. The shuttle blasted forward, crashing through the hangar's sealed exit and exploding into open nebula space. Alarms wailed. Panels fell off. A wing caught fire. But they were alive. The makeshift craft sputtered violently as Aaron piloted it toward the coordinates flickering on the stolen data key. Kirk stared in disbelief. He recognized the destination and explained that it was an old research moon orbiting a dying star. Most believed it abandoned centuries ago. Rumors said the facility was derived from technology older than any guild. Aaron gripped the controls tighter. That was exactly why he needed to reach it. The broker had implied that humanity was connected to something ancient. If answers existed, they were likely buried there. Their shuttle lurched into orbit around the tiny moon, which appeared gray and dead, coated in thick dust. They landed roughly, skidding along the surface until the craft flipped onto its side. Aaron crawled out, coughing but relieved nothing vital had snapped off him. The moon was silent except for a faint hum beneath the ground, like the heartbeat of something enormous sleeping deep below. Kirk stayed close, nervous that the Silence Guild might follow. Aaron assured him they would arrive eventually, but he intended to finish what he came for before they did. He found a circular hatch half buried in dust. It responded when he brushed his hand across it, glowing faintly and sinking into the ground with ancient precision. A staircase spiraled downward into darkness. Aaron took a breath and descended, Kirk trembling behind him. The deeper they went, the louder the hum became. At the bottom, they reached a massive chamber lit by pale blue crystals embedded in the walls. Strange symbols marked the tiles, patterns Aaron somehow recognized without understanding why. In the center of the chamber stood a tall cylindrical interface made of both metal and stone. It pulsed slowly, like it was breathing. Aaron approached it cautiously. As he touched the surface, the entire chamber activated. Lines of light crawled across the floor, connecting shapes that aligned like constellations. A projection flickered upward, displaying a vast star map that shifted and twisted until it formed the outline of a humanoid figure. The figure spoke in a language neither Aaron nor Kirk had heard, but Aaron's translator translated immediately. It identified itself as an archive intelligence created by a vanished species known only as the Ancients. The projection revealed shocking information. Humans were not an accidental result of evolution. Long ago, the Ancients seeded Earth with modified life, shaping early humans with a dormant quantum resonance organ. The organ had no physical form but existed as a latent energy structure deep in human biology. When triggered, this resonance disrupted high-level technology, rendering advanced weapons powerless. The Ancients embedded this trait to create a counterweight to destructive civilizations. Humans, without ever knowing it, were part of a larger galactic plan. Aaron and Kirk stood frozen. Everything made terrible sense. Humans were valuable not because of their intelligence, perseverance, or emotional extremes, but because they could unknowingly disable technology. That ability could topple guilds or empower them. Aaron felt an unsettling mix of awe and dread. Then the archive displayed a final message. The Ancients foresaw that their creations would one day face corruption from within the galaxy. The only defense was a genetic key hidden on Earth, capable of activating humanity's dormant trait. Aaron realized the Broker of Souls knew all of this. The Broker was not simply orchestrating chaos. They were manipulating the galaxy using knowledge stolen from the Ancients. Before Aaron could process it fully, footsteps echoed from the stairwell. He spun around as a figure descended into the chamber, illuminated by the soft blue glow. Kirk hid behind him. The figure wore layered robes infused with faint circuitry, and their face was partly concealed by a luminous mask that shifted like flowing water. But when they spoke, their voice carried authority and calm familiarity from the Broker hologram in the Chamber of Echoes. The Broker of Souls had arrived in person. Aaron took an involuntary step back. He expected a monster or a machine, but the figure removed their mask, revealing a surprisingly human-like face with features subtly blended with alien traits. They explained that they were a hybrid, a descendant of the Ancients' custodians who had monitored the galaxy for millennia. Their purpose had always been to restore balance, not destroy it. The guilds had grown too powerful. The galaxy needed correction. Humans were the key to shifting the balance. The Broker raised a hand, studying Aaron with an expression both analytical and strangely compassionate. They wanted Aaron to help activate the dormant human trait across the species. With humans empowered, the Broker believed they could dismantle the guilds entirely. But Aaron sensed something darker beneath the words, an ambition wrapped in logic. The broker did not just want to save the galaxy. They wanted to reshape it. The moon base shook violently as the Silence Guild breached the outer shell, sending deep tremors rolling through the ancient chamber. Aaron steadied himself on the crystal floor while dust drifted down in thin, ghostly curtains. Kirk yelped and scrambled behind a broken console, peering out with trembling eyes. The Broker of Souls remained eerily calm, studying the descending stairwell as if they had expected this exact moment. Aaron could hear armored footsteps growing louder, echoing through the spiraling corridor above. It was the sound of approaching inevitability. Aaron knew that standing still meant being captured, disassembled, or weaponized. He could not allow any of those outcomes. Not for himself, not for humanity. The broker turned to him and spoke, urging him to remain still until they solved the immediate threat. Aaron ignored the instruction. He motioned for Kirk to stay low and darted toward a side passage revealed by the flickering lights. Kirk followed, his small steps echoing like frantic taps behind Aaron's heavier stride. The passage opened into a large hangar built into the moon's core, full of abandoned research equipment coated in crystalline dust. Remnants of ancient machinery hummed faintly, as if awakening after centuries of silence. Aaron saw panels along the walls that looked like weapon racks, though their designs were alien and archaic. Another explosion thundered from behind them as the Silence Guild tore open the chamber entrance. Their distorted voices barked orders in metallic tones that bounced off the stone. Aaron grabbed the first object resembling a shield, a circular metal disc with faint etchings that illuminated when touched. Kirk picked up a nearby rod that glowed with unstable energy. Aaron took it from him immediately and replaced it with a sturdier length of metal pipe, warning him not to wave around anything that hummed angrily. Kirk nodded nervously. The first wave of Silence Guild soldiers stormed into the hangar. Their armor shimmered with adaptive camouflage, making their silhouettes blur. Aaron gripped the disc and ran forward, instincts taking over. He slammed the shield into the nearest soldier with a force amplified by the ancient technology. The impact sent the soldier crashing backward into a column, sparks bursting from his suit. Kirk, despite his terror, jabbed another soldier in the leg with his pipe, squeaking triumphantly even as he hid behind Aaron. Aaron pulled him along before the injured soldier could retaliate. The battle escalated quickly, overwhelming in sound and movement. The moon facility roared under the onslaught of energy blasts striking the crystalline walls. Aaron ducked behind an overturned platform and realized the ancient disk was reacting strongly to the incoming fire, absorbing and redirecting energy. He angled it as another blast hit, sending the beam ricocheting off the surface and knocking down two soldiers with perfect accidental precision. Kirk gasped and declared Aaron a master of shield combat. Aaron muttered that he had just invented it and hoped it would continue working. The broker finally entered the hangar, gliding as though unaffected by the chaos. They extended their hand toward a cluster of dormant machines. Lines of light awakened inside the walls, forming a barrier that cut off the incoming soldiers temporarily. Aaron demanded to know why the broker had not done this earlier. The broker replied calmly that they wished to see how Aaron adapted under pressure. Aaron gritted his teeth. He did not appreciate being evaluated like an experiment. Before he could argue, the barrier flickered violently. More Silence Guild forces approached, stronger than before. Their armor shifted into a darker mode, pulsing with lethal intent. Aaron tried to assess the situation, but the broker spoke quickly, explaining that they needed the genetic key Aaron carried. They could activate the dormant human resonance field now, broadcasting it through the moon's core amplifiers. Doing so would disable every advanced weapon system in range, giving them a chance to fend off the guilds. Aaron hesitated. He remembered the broker's earlier words, their ambition hidden beneath veiled logic. But they were nearly out of time. Before he could decide, a section of the ceiling collapsed as a massive Silence Guild commander dropped into the hangar. His armor was thicker, spiked, and radiating an unnatural glow. He roared a command that shook the air, and the soldiers resumed their attack with brutal intensity. Aaron realized the broker was right about one thing: without the resonance activation, they would not survive this. He pulled the genetic key from his pocket. It pulsed faintly in his palm. The broker stepped forward with an expression somewhere between triumph and relief. But before they could take it, Aaron jerked his hand back and declared that if the key was used, it would be under his control. The broker agreed with surprising ease, though a glint in their eyes suggested unspoken plans. Together, they approached the ancient core regulator embedded in the hangar's far wall. The device resembled a massive crystalline spine, its center glowing with dormant power. Aaron pressed the key into the regulator socket. Instantly, the entire chamber lit with blinding white light. A tremor rippled through the moon. Kirk clamped his hands over his ears as a deep hum resonated through the walls. Outside, the Silence Guild's weapons sputtered, short-circuited, then fell silent. Their armor systems flickered uncontrollably. Soldiers stumbled as their suits powered down. The hulking commander roared in rage, swinging his massive arm but failing to activate any of his built-in enhancements. Aaron seized the moment. He charged forward, using the shield to bash aside the disoriented soldiers. Kirk bravely followed, whacking ankles and knees with determined squeaks. The commander lunged toward Aaron, swinging with raw physical force. Aaron dodged, slid across the dusty floor, and struck the commander's knee with all his strength. The joint cracked. The commander collapsed with a thunderous crash. With one final push, Aaron flipped the shield and slammed its glowing surface into the commander's chest plate, smashing the power core embedded inside. The giant fell motionless. The remaining soldiers retreated, scrambling back toward the stairwell. The echo of their departure faded slowly, leaving only the hum of the activated resonance field. Aaron lowered the shield, panting heavily. His arms ached. His entire body trembled. Kirk flopped onto the ground, exhausted but alive. The broker stepped forward again, their gaze fixed on the glowing regulator. They explained that the resonance activation would spread beyond the moon, disabling guild fleets across nearby star systems. This was the first step toward collapsing the entire guild structure. Aaron listened, but something in the broker's tone unsettled him deeply. The broker spoke of collapse like someone savoring victory rather than seeking peace. Aaron asked what their real plan was. The broker smiled slightly. They revealed that the ancients had once ruled the galaxy through carefully structured intervention. With the guilds weakened and humanity awakened, the galaxy would naturally fall under new guidance. Their guidance. The brokers saw themselves as the rightful heir to the ancients' will. The broker of souls stared at Aaron Maddox with a calmness that felt like a blade against the skin, silent and waiting for the moment he would surrender the last remnants of resistance. The humming resonance field pulsing through the moon base gave everything a shimmering glow, as if reality itself was holding its breath. Aaron tightened his grip on the ancient shield, feeling its weight in his already trembling arm. Kirk hovered behind him, darting glances between the broker and the exit as though calculating the odds of survival, and deciding they were somewhere just above hopeless but below certain doom. The broker's voice broke the silence, smooth and confident, explaining that the galaxy needed order. The guilds were collapsing, and humanity would rise not as victims but as controlled assets. With Aaron's help, the broker could resurrect the structure the ancients had once governed. Aaron listened, chest heaving. He recognized the tone. It was the sound of someone convinced the world belonged to them. He had heard similar voices among people in power on Earth, though none of them came with ancient technology and a plan to control 12 star systems. Aaron stepped forward slowly, shield lifted, and told the broker that humanity would decide its own fate, not be molded into a tool by someone claiming noble intentions. The broker's expression hardened, disappointment flickering behind their eyes. They raised their hand, drawing energy from the resonance core, forcing it to twist into a concentrated blast. Aaron dove aside as the beam struck the ground where he had stood only seconds before, sending debris and dust exploding upward. The broker moved with unnatural speed, fueled by ancient technology woven into their physiology. They launched another attack, and Aaron barely managed to block it with the glowing shield, the impact buzzing through his bones. Kirk squeaked in panic, grabbing a loose power coil and hurling it blindly. It bounced off a wall and exploded harmlessly, causing Kirk to let out a frightened apology. Aaron shouted for him to stay down. The broker advanced, their steps measured, eyes glowing with the rising power of the activated resonance. Aaron circled, trying to predict the next strike. He had no strategy beyond survival, and refusing to let the broker win. When the next blast came, Aaron used the shield to redirect the energy upward, where it cracked against the ceiling in a burst of light. Crystalline shards rained down, forcing the broker to step back. Aaron lunged, slamming the edge of the shield into their side. The broker staggered but recovered quickly, retaliating with a sweeping force that sent Aaron tumbling across the floor. He skidded to a stop near a shattered console. Pain throbbed through his ribs and shoulder. His breath came shallow, but he pushed himself to his feet. The broker approached again, calm returning like a tide. They spoke of destiny, claiming that Aaron only delayed the inevitable. But those words gave Aaron an idea. If the broker relied on the resonance, and the ancient technology blended with their body, then overloading the connection might weaken them. Aaron looked at the humming regulator in the wall, and realized he could disrupt it. Not destroy it completely, but destabilize the energy flow enough to break the broker's control without collapsing the moon. He yelled for Kirk to help distract them. Kirk hesitated for exactly 1 terrified second before mustering a shaky battle cry that sounded more like a hiccup, then gathered the courage to dart around the broker, waving his arms wildly. The broker turned briefly toward him, distracted by the small nuisance. Aaron used the moment to sprint toward the regulator. The broker realized his intent and fired a pulse of force toward him. Aaron dove behind the central column of the regulator as the blast hit it, shaking the chamber. Kirk, realizing the broker had shifted focus, seized a second opportunity by throwing chewed gum that he had been oddly carrying in his bag. The sticky wad hit the broker's arm, interrupting the flow of glowing circuitry infused in their skin. Sparks erupted as the ancient interface struggled with the foreign material clogging its channels. The broker let out a furious cry, trying to rip the gum off as the circuitry flickered uncontrollably. Aaron slammed the shield into the regulator panel, causing the energy rods to misalign. A surge of unstable resonance shot through the chamber. The broker screamed as their connection to the system overloaded, sending shockwaves through their body. Aaron shielded his face as the light intensified, then faded suddenly. When the glow dimmed, the broker collapsed to the ground, weakened but still breathing. Their power was broken, the resonance no longer fuel for domination. Aaron approached cautiously, shield still raised, but the broker merely glared with exhausted fury. They warned him that dismantling the guilds would leave a vacuum the galaxy was not prepared to fill. Aaron replied that freedom always carried uncertainty, and that was what made it real. The brokers slipped into unconsciousness, their threat neutralized. Kirk exhaled in relief so dramatic that he nearly fainted. Aaron knelt beside the regulator, checking for stability. The resonance field would continue to spread for a short time, enough to disable guild fleets and communications. It was not permanent, but it was enough to shift the balance. They left the broker behind, sealing the chamber to prevent their immediate recovery. Then Aaron and Kirk made their way back to the damaged shuttle still half lodged in the moon's dust. With rudimentary fixes and a bit of pleading, Aaron coaxed the battered craft into lifting off. As they soared into space, they witnessed guild ships drifting powerless like metallic whales, unable to fire or maneuver. Across the nebula, systems flickered offline. The imbalance that had threatened humanity was cracking apart, and revolt spread quickly among species long oppressed by the guild hierarchy. Word traveled faster than surveillance. Aaron Maddox, the human hunter sent alone, had tipped the scales of the galaxy. Upon returning to the shattered Alliance port, now in disarray from the guild collapse, Aaron met representatives of independent factions already forming a new Alliance council. They offered Earth a place among them. Kirk, now a minor hero among his people, was appointed to serve as an ambassador to Earth, though he kept confusing dogs for divine guardians during the ceremonies. Aaron laughed for the first time in days, relieved the galaxy was slowly reshaping without falling into new tyranny. When Aaron finally returned to Earth, crowds welcomed him not with fear but pride. Life slowly returned to normal, though the skies now carried possibilities that had once felt like myths. Aaron stood on a quiet hillside overlooking the horizon, trying to believe the journey he had taken. Humanity was free. The bounty was gone. The broker's shadow had faded. As he turned to leave, a soft hum vibrated through the ground. A buried ancient beacon activated beneath the soil, pulsing faintly as if waking from a long sleep. Aaron stared at it with a weary smile, realizing the galaxy might not be done with him yet. Behind him, Kirk asked nervously if all humans now glowed or only the important ones. Aaron chuckled and replied that only the ones who needed to be found carried that glow.